Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Mendel Cohen. So, Mendel, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Hey, my name is Mendel Cohen from Miami, Florida, sunny Miami.
And what do you do for a living?
I work in advertising marketing, specifically for B2B companies.
So, I'm just curious about your background. Like, how did you kind of get into the space in the first place?
I worked in a couple of different agencies and a couple of firms, handling all sorts of projects. It was really broad. You know, some of the biggest hotel chains, some of the biggest tech companies in the world, really as a project manager and just managing all that. And I saw a lot of, I guess you can see a lot of holes in the market on how things are handled within the agency space. I saw a big trend of like services being productized, at least in the couple companies that I work with. And it's not the case with every agency. At the time, it seemed like there was just a better approach to handling campaigns and handling projects for companies. And that's when I branched out, created Krafted Digital, and that's exactly what we do. We build, full cycle marketing campaigns for specifically B2B companies.
Awesome. So when you say B2B, are there certain verticals and certain platforms that you kind of focus more on?
Well, I would say there's a lot in SaaS. In the SaaS space, we do a lot of work in the SaaS space, but it's really broad. You can have a company that does corporate transportation or a company that sells, stones to commercial buildings. It's really broad and it really varies. I guess there's a big focus on tech and SaaS, but it could be anything.
So for example, if I have like a SaaS company and if I want to work with your agency, what does that process look like in terms of just like, getting started? What type of platforms, like how does that whole, setup look like, and how could, I benefit from working with your agency?
Right. Well, there's a very specific type of company that we work with well, companies that are somewhat established, and we help them develop really, cycle full campaign covering the whole buyer's journey. And that's really goes down to our philosophy and how we work. We have the belief that all marketing campaigns and marketing results really are only as good as the systems that you have behind the actual campaign. So if you don't have a compelling offer, if you don't have good lead nurturing systems, if you don't have good automation systems, even small things like if your site is slow or if you don't have a clear brand message, then no matter the ad campaign that you do and how creative it may be, nothing is really going to work. So when we take on projects, we have a very hands-on approach that looks at encompassing the entire journey, the entire cycle. A lot of the work that we do is focused on building omni-channel campaigns. And really, what we want to do at the end of the day is get in front of the right people with the right message at the right time. And that's really what marketing all comes down to. So that's kind of like a very summarized version of our approach when dealing with companies and our philosophy behind creating good campaigns.
That's awesome. And I guess with campaigns, right? Because you were saying earlier that you're kind of doing a lot of stuff in AI. So I guess how does that kind of come into play? What are you, focused on when it comes to AI, helping your clients grow? Do you use a lot of AI automation tools on LinkedIn or email? Or I guess what is that process and where does it come into play?
So AI does a lot these days. I mean, it's a fairly new thing that a lot of the industry is getting used to. I feel like the marketing space is really at the forefront of this AI innovation. There's a lot of ways that AI marketers are using these tools, and there's good ways to use it. There's bad ways to use it. One of the good ways to use it is really using it as a marketing assistant. Some of the things that we use it for is content creation and doing it a specific way, not asking AI to write a blog for you, but I talk about this concept of integrating your brain with these large language models like ChatGPT, where you pretty much give it examples of work, you tell it to analyze the speech patterns, the writing style and all that, and then you give it a lot of context behind the product that you're creating content for. And it all comes down to that. Context is the most important thing when dealing with these systems. So the way we use it is, building custom GPTs that can help us create content and a whole host of different types of automation. So things like data enrichment, for example, that usually in the past required manual work, whether it be a VA or someone on your team to actually go ahead and review all the data and see, what's the right ICP or not. If you prompt AI agents properly, they can do that pretty much in an instant with huge databases. And same with creating custom messaging. And for the outreach, it's a game changer. There's a lot of AI tools that really help a lot with outreach, which is great for B2B because data is in B2B is fairly easy, accessible with the right tools. And then it's about having a personalized message, which is the only thing that works these days. And AI is great to automate that at scale, where in the past, you'd have a BDE or an SDR go and do it all. And now you have marketing companies and other companies that will set up AI systems to just do that in the masses.
So how do you make sure that it's personalized and high quality? Because I'm sure I receive a lot of these AI messages that are super generic and very spammy and super annoying, So it's how do you kind of bridge that balance when you're doing automation? So make sure it's personalized and also make sure that it's actually something that's going to.
So typically you don't just run it and let it rip. That would be a really risky strategy. What you would do is do some tests initially, and do tests with let's say it's 10 rows, and just see kind of what the AI is the feedback you're getting from it. And from there, if you have a good sample size, let's say 20, 30, and you got a good percentage of messages that are delivering properly the way you want it to, then you can go at scale. But same thing with all these GPTs. And if you're building anything, even from AI support bots for your company, you want to really make sure that it has it down pen. It's not always going to be perfect. It's going to require constant training, and there may be mistakes. It's part of the game. But some of the things that you can do to avoid those mistakes, is to just talk with it, ask it questions. You have what we call sanity checks, where it's hey, you write a blog about this. Okay, you're right. So how did it go? Okay, do it again and do a couple tests. And then, once it gets it down, you don't really have to worry about it much. Testing you can't really skip that step, or else, it might say things that you don't want it to.
And I think also for automation, what I've seen a challenge with LinkedIn is that they can restrict your account or punish you sometimes for using too much automation.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you kind of bridge that balance? I mean, you said maybe do 30, a smaller number per day. Is that kind of what you focus on? Or I guess how do you make sure that you're not going to get penalized per se from a third party platform such as LinkedIn?
So, some platforms are easily detectable and some aren't. I know this is against their policies, but you have to really make sure that you're not going too far with it. And a lot of the times people will get banned because they get marked as spam. And the easiest way to not get marked as spam is to come off with an actual personalized message, because at that point you're not just saying, hey, look at my service, it's great, use it, but you're providing, let's say, something of value. And there's a very specific way of outreach that used to work back in the day that doesn't work so much today. The spray and pray method, where you're just getting as much people as you can and just submitting an offer or a pitch or whatever it may be, or trying to sell something. And today that doesn't work as well. Today it's more value-based. It's more specific problem. You have things like intent signals, buying signals that other software can attribute to providing for you.
For sure.
But if it's personalized, usually you won't deal with any big problems.
So do you have a software that kind of integrates Clay or something like that to do intent signals, and then you coordinate with that to make sure listen, for example, I have an e-commerce agency, I'm looking for this SaaS product to help me streamline XYZ. Then you would see that I'm looking for this kind of offer, and you say, hey, and then you sort of reach out to me and say, hey, Dan Melnick, are you looking for this type of thing? And, we can help you out with that. Is that sort of the process?
So there's a platform called Unify that does that. Unify is good. And then there's custom integrations that you can have with Clay. There's web scrapers. Appify is one of them. If you have connectmake.com and some of these other tools, you can kind of scrape anything you want to, from LinkedIn posts to news of companies as well. Things like funding from Crunchbase, and a lot of these types of signals, these types of data points that may help reaching out with building out a list and where you can reach out to the right people. Those are some of the ones that come top of mind.
For sure, yeah. I think that's super important. I think intent signals for sure are super helpful. And then I guess in terms of, because you were saying that you've worked with different industries, obviously B2B SaaS is a big one, but how do you work with other B2B? Because obviously, manufacturing is very different from SaaS. So how do you kind of there's a different process for each one? Because I think what I've seen in certain industries, people are not always as active on LinkedIn if they're not in tech. So how do you kind of balance that of just getting a hold of people, for example?
So it's a great question. At the end of the day, the foundations are almost always the same. So you have for example, let's say in a B2B company, the B2B campaign, you're finding out the right person to get in touch with. Whether it's the VP of sales, VP of marketing, it really depends on the product and the company you're targeting. And then it comes down to getting a right message, the right pitch, the right outreach strategy, your right media buying strategy, your right personal branding strategy, whatever it may be. But really, the only thing that differentiates within each campaign is the type of offering, which is, a big thing. And I guess if you're really experienced in a specific niche, I guess what resonates more with the target audience. But a lot of the times it's done in collaboration with the clients. What a company like us, what we do, we build systems, everything from lead nurturing systems and lead generation systems, and we optimize it well and we put it together. And then as far as the content and some of the things like content and offers that are more niche specific, we collaborate with the client. We do a lot of research as well before taking on the project. It really comes down to a lot of researching the industry, researching the niche, finding out how buyers think in that niche. And then usually you're able to plug it into the foundations that we see work really well, whether it's the type of automation that we do or the type of channels that we use. A lot of the times they apply across industries.
So in terms of AI, right? I mean, I think one area where I see like a newer kind of trend in AI is like cold calling with phone calls. So have you guys leveraged that, or do you guys kind of focus more on the digital side of things?
So, the phone calling thing is interesting. It's really good. It's just not there yet. The voices are too detectable at its current state. I mean, will it eventually get to the point where you can't detect what an AI is? Maybe. But right now, the solution's available, and we've checked at many of them, especially the popular ones, and even some of the underground ones that aren't so flashy. Nothing has passed the tests. So if it gets there, I mean, the answers behind the AI, I think, are really good. They're powered by some of the best large language models that there are. The answers they can come up with if you provide it with a good knowledge base is really great. It's just really the voice. So AI is used best, I think, in my opinion, right now for the customer support side of things, or even the outreach side of things, text and email, anything text-based, because you can't really hear a voice in text. Sometimes you can detect AI writing, but that's only if your thing is not prompted well. When it comes to phone call, it's really a problem with the voice and how it sounds. So if it eventually sounds more like a human, not just sound like a human, be able to conversate like a human, meaning if I cut the AI off, how long does it take the AI to stop talking? Small things like that, they haven't been able to crack the code to it. Will they eventually do it? Probably. It's getting there. These things are growing exponentially, but it depends on, probably need a lot of more computing power maybe. Well,
for sure. So I guess like if somebody engages you guys for cold calling, so then do you just use like humans, I'm assuming?
So cold calling is not something we provide. That's more something that, if a company wanted to engage us for cold calling, I would say hire a BDE that knows the business and that can actually cold call from an internal perspective, not an external perspective. I know external perspectives can work sometimes, but I just my opinion on it. There's call centers. We're not a call center. We stay away from that. So that's what I would say.
And I guess in terms of the location of your clients, are they mostly in Florida? Are they mostly in the U.S.? Like, where are they typically located? And I guess if they're also outside the U.S., like, I'm curious if some of your strategies are different depending on which country you're working with.
Yeah, most of it's in the U.S. Really, a big majority of it's in the U.S. 90+% of it, and we do have some international. So we had this company that sold chocolates from Swiss. Not B2B, but that was a while ago. We had this company that would sell staircases from Germany to like commercial buildings. We had this electronic product company in South Korea. It's not common. They have occasionally come up. We don't really reject the business unless it doesn't really fit with our team's capabilities, but the large majority are US based.
So for those clients, you typically will work with translators and copywriters to...
Oh, they speak English.
Okay. So then you're targeting...
Oh, in South America, we had a good amount from South America, actually. A lot of the times, they're not clients, almost every single time I can remember, they're not clients that want us to market in their location. They're clients with companies in these other countries that want to come into American market. So they want an American agency that can deal with the market here.
Yeah, that's kind of been our bread and butter as well. I mean, it's like oftentimes for the e-commerce brands, some are international, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, marketing there, but like, yeah, it's the same thing. It's if they're, a client like Vietnam, places like that, they're targeting like this market. They're not looking for us to market locally. So
Yeah.
that's why they engage a U.S. agency. But yeah, if they speak English for us, it's easy. But yeah, I totally get that. So
hmm
in terms of your business, right, obviously right now we're in Q2 here in 2025. So what are some of your biggest goals and objectives like for the rest of this year?
Pointing down specifics, I think we really want to improve the service offerings that we have around AI specifically. It's a lot of based on the conversation that we spoke about. It's a new thing. It's probably going to really take over the marketing space with all the developments that are coming on. I just scrolling through X and LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of new tools every day that do crazy things. I saw one the other day, which just automated the process of making ad creatives, and it would do it in a very specific way with analyzing the ad library and what's working and what's not. And these are the things that would take many hours to do. Whether this takes over the whole world, I guess we'll have to find out with time. But it's definitely taking over a lot of industries and a lot of parts of a lot of industries. So we definitely want to improve on that as well. And we've been doing a lot. We've been investing in our own software. We've been investing in building our own integrations. So that's something that's really given us a good a good head start to it. And in terms of other growth objectives, I mean, scaling in agencies is something that's really difficult, once you reach the thresholds and you need to take on more business. So hopefully in this year we want to just continue to expand. Really, that's always the goal: expand year over year, and hopefully using AI to do a lot of the expansion.
That's awesome. That's a very good goal. So what would you say is like the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you got started?
But I would say that in this space, right, in the agency space, I would say to take projects for free. That's something that I don't see a lot of people do when starting out. They're charging, sometimes it's big prices, even if it's small. The best way to get projects as an agency is not going to be on how flashy you market your services. It's going to be on your track record. It's going to be on your case studies, and you need that. And that costs a lot of money in and of itself. So what I tell people starting in the industry and they need to get their first clientele or they need to build a name for themselves is, look, if you're getting a whether it's an RFP or whether it's a potential client, take it for free or do it performance based. And that case study itself that you're going to get out of that is worth a lot of money. And you can take that case study and then market it and then use it to really build your business. I would say in the beginning, especially, take some projects for free, build your experience, build your name, build your track record, and that's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of wasted time on calls with people that really don't want to deal with a company without a track record.
That's good advice. So if somebody watching this wanted to work with you, do you mind sharing your website, social media, I guess best ways to get in contact?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter a lot. Mendel Cohen __ is the handle. As for the website, crafteddigital.com, crafted with a K. So crafteddigital.com. As a site, you can reach out to us there. And then, just follow me on Twitter as well while you're at it.
Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.